Okay, guys, I want to talk to you right now about how we're going to answer a constructed response question and do a really good job of it. Okay, I am going to pretend like I'm at the point in my week where I've already read all my articles and I've taken notes. So you see my notes here, and you see that I have my question highlighted. And incidentally, the last video told you that you would pick two, but I changed it to one when I started doing this. Okay, so this still says two, but your new document that you pull up, you'll notice it only has one question. That's okay. So I'm focusing on why is it important to represent diverse and contemporary Native American voices, experiences, and perspectives. In other words, why is it important to show several different perspectives and several different ways of thinking about things when I'm talking about the Native American voices? The main article that told me about that was this article that says Native American History, Diversity Among the Tribes. This column, as you'll remember, these are words from the text, and this is my own thinking about them. My own thinking is many tribes existed, so we have to be careful about making generalizations, okay, because many tribes existed, okay? So there are some other conclusions I made based on other articles, like this one, young women worked hard and were in charge of food and fire. I found that from one of the articles. Dancing is a major part of their religious ceremony or celebration. I saw that. I saw Native American people sometimes change names and their names have meaning. So that's something else that I saw. So, and of course, you will have to have done all of them, all of the articles. So it says now it's time to write a well-written response using race. I'm going to come back up here and make it clear what my question is by copying the question and in this box, pasting the question. Control V. Okay, so in this box, underneath first question I'm answering, or yours probably just says question I'm answering, you put the question. Then it says, well-written paragraph using race and information from your evidence conclusion chart. So we have done a lot of lessons on race, and I'm even going to include one for you in this that you'll also do. But this is just more of a chance for me to model and show you what that looks like. We're going to restate the question and answer the question both in the first sentence. So my question is, why is it important to represent diverse? And then it says and contemporary, but I'm focusing on diverse Native American voices. I'm actually going to copy that question, paste it in here, just so I have a frame of reference. I don't want my answer to be highlighted. I'm going to say, it is important to represent diverse and contemporary Native American voices, experiences, and perspectives because, and so now I'm going to answer the question. I've already been thinking about the answer to this question, so it's kind of like I'm cheating here, but I'm modeling for you what you do. So you're going to stop and think. And so the reason I'm going to suggest, and there's many, but the reason I'm going to suggest is because many people without those experiences may not understand the perspectives of Native Americans. Okay, now is when I go in and so I've restated and answered. The reason I think it's important is because without having had those experiences, we may not understand their perspective. So that's why they need to be represented in the things that we read and in the lessons that we have. So now I'm going to come up here. I've restated and answered. I'm going to give at least one sentence, maybe two, where I cite evidence. I do not have to use evidence from every article to answer my question. I did have to collect it, but I don't have to use evidence from every article. The quote that I like says there are 574 different Native American tribes or nations recognized by the US government today. There is no single Native American language. I don't actually need to talk about the language, but I'm going to say, instead of the text says, I better say Native American history, diversity among the tribes. The article, Native American history, diversity among the tribes, tells its readers that, I'm going to put a quotation mark and I'm going to paste the quote. Okay, and it's okay if you don't mess with the font too much, but I am going to come back in here. Okay, make it a little bit easier to read. It's a little different still. Now I'm going to end with a quote. Okay, and this is really just a side note, extra information, but I am going to put the article title in italics because that is what we're supposed to do. Okay. So now I'm going to actually take out this. There is no single Native American language because that's not as important to answering my question. So now I'm still not done. I've restated and answered in my own words. I've cited evidence that are not my words. So you can trust me that I'm thinking about what other people think. Now I'm going to do the E right here, explain my thinking. I'm going to pretend like a first grader is reading this and they don't know what diverse means. They didn't read the article. They don't know. They don't really know. So I'm going to explain this in my own words. What this means is that there are well over 500 tribes and many of them had different celebrations and traditions. We represent these, or we can represent these. I'll have to go back and edit this before I submit. We can represent these in books, songs, and movies. When we do this, it helps their fellow Americans understand their perspective or how they see the world. So I'm kind of giving it my own words, okay? Now, this is a good, well-written paragraph. I could be done. If I wanted to like sprinkle some gold dust on it, I would go back in and in my notes, I actually read that currently dancing is a major part of their religious traditions. I read that women had to work hard and they were in charge of the food and fire. So I read some additional information that I could include here if I wanted to share like why that perspective might be different than my own personal one or why it might be similar. I'm actually not going to take the time to do that because I want to keep this video short and I want you to see like the minimum of what is required of you. If your answer doesn't look at least as long as mine does, you probably need to go back and rethink it. If your answer has all words that somebody else said, you probably need to go back in and rethink it. If your answer has only your words and only your ideas, you probably need to go back and think it.